two, one. What is up, Bullish Nation? Tough loss again. We got a guest on here to talk about it. I used to listen to Bull Court Press back in the day with you and Steph, right? If I remember
Yeah, it's
correctly.
been a little while since the Bull Court press days, but I'm glad you were glad you liked it.
Will Gottlieb, at Will Gottlieb on Twitter. Always love that Will won't change up from your name to Twitter. How's it going, Will?
Going well. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. And you were just about to talk about how it's a weird, interesting game. So I'm just going to let you go with whatever comes to your mind first, post game, your initial reactions to this 124 to 115 loss at Milwaukee.
Yeah, sure. I guess the big storyline for me was 3-pointers on both sides. Bulls went 42%, 18 of 43 on threes. The Bucks only hit 6 on 33 attempts, 18%, and that really kept the Bulls alive for the first 3.5 quarters. The Bulls actually were right there for most of the game. And so if you were just looking at the score, you'd think, good for them for sticking it out and fighting with this Bucks team, with the MVP and Giannis and just, conference finalists. But, the interesting, hyper aggressive trapping defense, I think, resulted in a lot of shots at the rim for the Bucks and a lot of open threes. Fortunately for the Bulls, the Bucks missed a lot of their threes, and the Bulls were absolutely on fire again. Kobe, 6 of 13 from three, kind of led the way, and that's kind of what kept them in there.
I mean, getting up 13 threes, he got up 11 last game, right? Hit seven of them.
Yeah,
He
seven of
is
11.
so in the past two games, he's at 22 or 24 threes taken. He's hitting them at a great percentage. He picked up right where he
Yeah,
left off.
13 for 24.
Exactly. So like it the game wasn't even that frustrating until like the last 3 4 minutes. We saw the emergence of a four guard lineup. um,
That we did.
with Arch, Kobe, Zach Levine, and Saturansky. I just don't understand the stubbornness of not playing Gafford when Giannis is just grabbing every single rebound over all of our players. Why is he not playing Gafford? Or would that have even been a solution?
So I think the reason, well, in part the reason why he went to that 4 guard lineup, and it was Arch, Kobe, Zach Levine, and Dunn for a stretch there, and then he switched Saturansky out for Dunn. Um, he actually had Archie Diacono picking up Giannis in half court sets, which was a little confusing to me. But the Bucks were also going pretty small. They had a 4 guard lineup with Korver at the four. I can't remember the other three off the top of my head, but I think they were just kind of matching each other in that way and really spacing it out for Giannis in this case. And then the Bulls had Lowry, who had a really rough night again, and we can get into that later. But Gafford, I think a lot of people are really anxious to see what he can do. I think 40-something overall pick, second rounder, rookie. I think maybe the expectations of what he is going to be able to produce are a little bit high. These guys, especially when you have to be the last line of defense in a system where there's so much movement and so much potential for guys to get into the lane and get to the rim, that's just a lot of pressure to put on him. And then if you want him to, guard Giannis, he's got to be able to move his feet and stay in front of him. And nobody on the Bulls could do that. I don't think Gafford would be any exception. Carter, Zach, Levine, both fouled out. Lowry had 5 fouls, so a lot of fouls, a lot of free throw attempts for Giannis. I think he had 20. And maybe Gafford gets some minutes here in the future. Cornette has been out of the rotation for a little bit, and maybe he kind of starts using another four big man rotation. But I would just temper your expectations as far as what Gafford will be able to produce if and when he does get minutes.
I don't. For me, I don't even think it's that I have crazy expectations of Gafford. It's that I want to see him at least not play well. That's my one thing. It's like he played well in the preseason. And the only reason I think he maybe could have made some sort of difference in this game, not because he's going to guard Giannis, but for me, he could have at least been a better guy to box him out on the rebounds, or his hands are one of his strengths, and he's strong too. So I feel like he could have grabbed at least one of those rebounds late that, really put the game away for the Bucks. That's the only reason. And I don't like everything you said is true about Gafford. It's just we haven't even had the chance to see him fail, which I think is what I'm most, aggravated about with him. Anyway, what else? Gafford isn't really the main topic here. Sorry, that was just like the thing that
A
was
little
freshest on
Gafford
my
aside.
mind.
No, I mean, those are all good points, and I think he will get minutes down the stretch here, and I expect to see him on the floor, and I'm also anxious to see what he can do. But I just, there has been a lot of we want Gafford,
Yeah.
people with pitchforks and all that, and I just, maybe Gafford expectations are a little high.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. But that doesn't change me wanting him to play. Anyway, let's go
For
to
sure, for sure.
Zach LaVine, who also was one of the reasons why I think down the stretch we were in it, but also one of the reasons why we didn't end up closing the gap fully because his tough shots went in to keep it within arm's reach, but his tough shots not going in is what didn't pull us all the way through, along with those rebounds. What do you feel like the one play where he did actually drive? It was positive. The plays where he pulled up for difficult threes or fadeaways, they didn't go in. So I'm just curious where you're at with this Zach LaVine shot selection when the game is coming down to the last minutes.
Yeah, so this game, the Bulls had a lead throughout most of it. Were beaten in the third quarter by 12, and the game was kind of starting to slip away. And I think Zach just gets into this mode where he gets really frustrated or anxious, or I don't know, just wants to be the guy and take over in a way that, I feel like he maybe thinks what level of player he is. And obviously, like, I would love to see him take over in these spots, but the shot selection and the decision making in general has been suspect. I think last game against the Knicks, he was really good. Obviously, Kobe was the one that kind of put the Bulls over the top in the fourth quarter, but Zach, I think, had a really solid overall game. I think he had 5 assists to 3 turnovers, 6 assists. In this game, it was 7
to 5,
assists
yeah.
and 5 turnovers. So a couple more turnovers. The shot selection was definitely questionable at times. A couple of really long twos, a couple of fadeaways, some catch and hold shots, which I think are really difficult, and obviously some really long fadeaway threes, one of which he hit on that right side, which brought the game a little bit closer. But I think when the game slows down and it's more of a half-court set, he wants to take over, and sometimes he's able to do it. Sometimes his tough shots go in. Other times the decision-making and the tough shots can catch up with him, and that's kind of what happened tonight.
Yeah, 25 points, 8 of 20 from the floor, 4 of 9 from three-point line. Got to the line 5 times, hit all of them, 7 assists, 3 rebounds, and 3 steals. He was active on the defensive end and one pretty decent block, as we mentioned. He did have 5 turnovers, fouled out along with Wendell Carter, who I'm going to go to next. Wendell, why is he still getting this treatment from the refs? It is combined with some stupid fouls that he makes, but combined with the ref's treatment of him, am I the only one here? Are you also frustrated, or is this just me not seeing it from a more objective point of view?
No, I think I don't know what it is, but it definitely feels like Wendell gets rung up on some pretty tough calls. I agree with what you said about him, making some kind of boneheaded fouls where he'll have a great verticality play. The shot will either get blocked or miss, and there will be an offensive rebound, and then he kind of collapses on a guy and fouls him. And those are just plays that he needs to eliminate. He's really got to trust that verticality that he brings to the table, which I think is really advanced for his age, and he's really good at it. It's not something that you see a lot in the NBA anymore. The 2015 kind of Roy Hibbert era, it was very popular, and I think refs were more used to calling it or not calling those. And maybe they're just a little bit more active with the whistle on them now, but it definitely seems like he's going straight up and down. So I would like to see him, I would like to see the refs let him play through those a little bit more. 21 minutes, 6 fouls, it's hard for him to get in a rhythm, and then all of a sudden it's affecting him on the offensive end. He had a nice game today, but in the past, it's really been hard for him to stay on the floor and stay in a good rhythm when he gets into these foul trouble situations.
Yeah, it affects his rhythm. It affects his mentality too. You see him, I mean, visibly and rightfully so, sometimes just annoyed and pissed off that he needs to come out, especially when he's been a really consistent force. I mean, 14.6 of 7 from the floor today, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, all, like you said, in 20 minutes. So the team also loses one of their best rebounders and defenders. Like, I'm talking about Gafford only because Wendell had fouled out. Because if Wendell was there, I'm sure it's a tougher battle for those rebounds for Giannis, and we might pull one of them down and push forward. And a lot of his like really smart and advanced defensive reads and plays that he makes gets wiped out. And also a bunch of potential plays that he could make gets wiped out because he doesn't even have a chance to show us what he has, because it's pretty frustrating to me. But then like he does make some ill-advised fouls. If he cuts those, at least we'll see less foul trouble from him, I'd say.
Yeah, he'll give himself a chance. And, he fouled out with 9 minutes to go. The Bulls were going to that 4 guard, 5 out lineup with Lowry. I would have loved to have seen Wendell in that situation as the roll man, where he can kind of show off his passing ability once he gets the ball kind of in the short roll heading towards the basket. I think he's a much more skilled passer than Lowry is. And, with 4 shooters around him, maybe they could have done a little bit more damage from the outside and kept that game a little closer.
Yeah, let's get to Lowry. 11 points, 2 of 9 again from the floor. When I say again, I mean like disappointing percentages.
Mm-hmm.
2 of 6 from 3-point line, 8 rebounds, a steal, and 3 turnovers for him. Last game, he was at 6 turnovers, which was the main topic of our show against the Knicks. But Mark Cianzulis had tweeted something about what his stats were in first halves versus second halves. And I feel like he had 9 points in the first half, 9 or 11. I forgot exactly what he had. And then in the second half, again, didn't score anything, basically. And it kind of correlates with when the Bulls play well versus when they don't. So I'm just curious, what is this discrepancy in Lowry's play? Is it just that oblique? Like, what's going on? Or what do you think is going on?
That's the big question. I mean, I think they being the Bulls, kind of handed out this kind of explanation for what's been up with Lowry. I tweeted out a stat of his first 5 games before he went out with a weird kind of injury and left on November 1st and after, and the volume and production were way down in those second 5 games. So it is possible that he's hurt. But I don't know why it would be a first half, second half thing, unless it's something that he can like stress and aggravate over, a period of time when he's using or when he's shooting or something. Yeah, I don't want to play doctor, but it definitely seems like something is wrong. He seems more timid, less aggressive. You see plays where he tries to go to the basket and dunk on guys, but it just seems like he's really forcing it, and it's not an actual attempt at something that he is capable of. Yeah, 11 points, 2 of 9 shooting. I mean, he did get to the line 6 times, but
All 6
I
in
think,
the first half.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Bulls are going to struggle if one of their supposed best offensive players is struggling. I think that's just the bottom line.
Yeah, Daily Apex on YouTube. Why does Lowry suck? Let's trade him. I mean, I don't want to talk about the trade stuff. I'm just curious how far you're away from that thought process yet. Is it something that they should, be considering? Is it just like, okay, let's hold on. His value's at an all-time low, which is where I'm at with it. But I'm curious, is that too ridiculous of a conversation to have yet?
Well, I mean, I think you should always be observing the market, and if you get an outlandish offer for somebody, be willing to at least consider it. I do agree with you though that right now he's just not playing well, and I think you're not going to get as much back for him as what the value that he brings to you. And I think Bulls fans are going to want a lot if they're trading away Lowry. I don't see somebody giving up enough to where that trade is worth it. And the other thing is, like, the Bulls are kind of playing this 2021 free agency game. Depending on which free agent they go after, Lowry could be a better or worse fit than maybe Wendell or one of the other players on the roster. So I think it makes sense for him to hold on right now just so they can kind of keep their options open. I do think he's going to have to turn it around at some point. I guess you run the risk of if he doesn't turn around, then the value continues to decrease. But yeah, I think I would be reticent to trade him before I kind of know what's up with this injury and just with his season so far.
Yeah, I mean that injury is a big time. We'll see how much that's actually affecting him. And it's only year 3. He's still only 22 years old. Plus, I always love the bet on yourself years before the restricted free agency. So, regardless of whether Lowry continues to play exactly like this or steps it up, I feel like before this contract runs up, it wouldn't be smart. Especially like you said, the 2020 plan, his cap hold is going to be like 20 million when the time comes. And whether or not he earns more than that, it's probably a number lower than what the Bulls thought they would have to have tied up for him. So either way, I think it would be too early to give up on Lowry, especially with the potential. I mean, we see the year that Wiggins is having now. They're completely different players, but people have written off Wiggins for a lot of years, like many years, including myself. That's not really a crazy thought to have. But giving up on players super early when they do flash a lot of potential is generally a mistake in my point of view. So anyway, let's move on to the next guy on the roster. Satoransky, 10 points, 4 of 8 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3, 5 assists, 3 steals, and 4 boards. Again, filling up that back end of the stat sheet. Part of the 4-guard lineup. Is there any reason why he might come off the bench at some point with Kobe being so hot, Satoransky having more size? If they're going to go with that 3-guard lineup, he could play the 3 instead of like Dunn or Archie. I'm just curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people bring up the Kobe starting thing, and I am of the opinion that Satoransky should 100% stay in the starting lineup. I think he is, a really solid player. I think he, doesn't always fill up the box score in a way that, the casual fan would say, wow, this guy is like really contributing. But I think he, can kind of run the offense a little bit. He can make plays. He's a very solid defender, knows where to be. And I think all those things really kind of mask some of Zach's deficiencies as far as defensive awareness and kind of court general play style. Mm-hmm. So I think both offensively and defensively, he's a very good complement to Zach. He's a solid 3-point shooter. Again, he's not going to wow you with anything, but I think he's really the guy that you want to have in the starting lineup with the size, the length. He can switch. He just checks a lot of boxes for me as far as what I would want in a backcourt mate with Zach. And Kobe, I mean, yes, he is absolutely on fire right now, but he was shooting 21% on threes before last game, sub 30% from the field. He's a spark plug, and he's going to get really hot, and he's going to get really cold. And I don't want to see him get really cold and be put in the starting lineup and everybody starts to turn on him. I think he's in a position right now where he can come off the bench, jack up some threes. Maybe he gets hot, maybe he doesn't, but there's less responsibility there than being the starting point guard. And I think right now, he's such a young kid. He's really got to grow into that role. I don't think he's quite ready for it.
Yeah, and we saw that in games 3 through whatever 2 games ago was, where he just went completely cold. Really, I was just checking his usage because it seems like he comes in and just starts chucking. It's at 25%, 71 percentile, so I guess it's not that crazy. But these past 2 games, it seems like whenever he's on the court, he just takes every shot that comes to him. One thing still with Satoransky, though, I'm curious what you think or what you've seen. I feel like the Bulls are a little bit better and function better offensively when Satoransky is either initiating the pick and roll with Wendell or if he's being a little bit more aggressive. Whenever he's not really in your mind during the game, like when he's a forgotten player in the game, it seems like that's when the Bulls are playing a more stagnant style. Why don't they keep him involved more, or is that just, or like, what do you think of that?
So I think it's actually a thing that Satoransky has struggled with. In the past with the Wizards, I think a lot of people would say that, sometimes he just kind of disappears. And, I think you're totally onto something where in those moments where he is disappearing, and since he does have such an important responsibility to keep the offense going if Zach is not on fire, the Bulls can kind of get stagnant. And especially with Otto Porter out of the lineup, he's been running a ton of pick and roll. With Lowry really struggling and having a hard time initiating offense, there's just been a ton of pressure on Zach and a ton of pressure on Satoransky to kind of keep things moving in an efficient way. And sometimes he's just not comfortable really pressing. I think that's why he has good percentages. He's not taking shots that he shouldn't be taking. He's taking smart shots. He's getting to his spots. And that's probably why, Zach's percentages can be a little lower at times, because he has to take some of those harder shots because there's just not a lot going on.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting because it seems like it's kind of a chicken or the egg situation where is it Zach really being selfish or taking a lot of tough shots that's making Satoransky kind of hide or be less featured, or is it Satoransky not being aggressive and calling for the ball that puts him in that situation, or is it both? Is it okay? Zach doesn't see Satoransky call for it 2 plays in a row, and then Satoransky gets in his own head. Oh, Zach's gonna do his thing again, and then Zach's like, oh, Satoransky's not calling for it. Like, is there a communication error? I don't know what's going on. I'm not on the court listening and in the locker room seeing what's going on there, but it's just interesting to see that develop. It seems like almost every game, because the first halves and first quarters, everyone's mentioning, we're all talking about it, how great the Bulls are looking. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Satoransky's generally been more aggressive and more involved in the first halves of games. So it's just something to keep an eye on moving forward. What have you thought of Hutch so far since his return?
Yeah, he's been pleasantly surprising. I'm not a huge Hutch believer as far as him being a starter level 3. He does a lot of things well. Obviously, the rebounding is the big thing, and he's come in and really helped the Bulls out in that regard. But he's just a big body who's mobile, who's fast, and he's strong to where he can get out in transition. And obviously, we see him all the time grabbing and going on those rebounds. Obviously, what really holds him back is the lack of a jump shot. He shot 1 3 today. It was just such a slow release, and he obviously is not super confident in it. And he doesn't have as much on the ball either. And so when you get into these half-court sets, obviously, he's great in transition, and running up and down the floor is good, and the Bulls are really trying to do as much of that as they can. But the game does slow down at times, and he's really not doing much in the half court. So that's kind of where I think he needs to improve his game, but has been a very solid defender, has helped the Bulls rebounding and transition game, and that's all been stuff that they really need.
Yeah, and his emergence, at least as a bench wing, not only with his solid play so far, I think you're definitely correct. Like, he's not a starting level player, but he's also been an effective wing and has filled in Otto's absence fairly well. I'd say Kobe's been on fire, so that's kind of why he's fallen out of those lineups, especially closing the games. But he also negates the need for the 3-guard lineup of Kobe, Dunn, and Arcidiacono, which has just been interesting to me that it still exists. I don't see another solution, I guess, when either Hutch or Otto is out. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is Denzel being really overlooked like Gafford is? I'm not sure if that's going to make a difference. What do you think?
Yeah, I think when Otto and Hutch are both back, you'll probably see a lot less of the triple or quadruple guard lineups that we saw today. Just sliding Hutch back into a role that I think makes more sense for him, where he can come off the bench and play his 15, 20 minutes there, and you've got Otto starting and playing 30-plus minutes. I think that just all makes a little bit more sense. Everything falls in line, and you probably don't have to worry as much about those super small lineups. But as far as Valentine, obviously there's something up with maybe his conditioning or trust with Jim Boylan. He does not seem to be anywhere close to being in the rotation. And, I don't think that Valentine really, he has some definite NBA skills, 3-point shooting. I think he can be a good passer, but I don't think he's going to help the Bulls on defense. I don't think he's going to help them with rebounding. I know his rebounding raw numbers can look pretty good, but a lot of them are just kind of uncontested long misses. I just, he doesn't do a ton for me, to be honest.
Yeah, no, Not for me either. It's just for me sometimes when you see a lineup not working or a trio like this lineup that we've seen time and time again kind of struggle unless Kobe's really hot. For me, it just seems like we should try something for a few minutes, and if it's not working, then have a quick trigger on it. Whether or not that's a good way to go about easing Denzel into the rotation, I'm not sure, but he should know that he's on a short leash based on not getting any minutes. So I don't think it would be that big of a surprise. But regardless, it's due to the injury anyway. I think that one game where Hutch and Otto, or the couple games where they were both in, we didn't see that lineup at all. We're seeing less Cornette, and he didn't play. But what do you think about him falling out of the rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has some definite positive attributes. And I think he can be a contributor, but the role that he was playing in, where he's kind of out defending pick and rolls and trying to corral guards coming downhill with the head of steam, it's just like he can't do that. He's 7'2" and super slow. You kind of want to have him just parked at the rim and deter shots where he can kind of add value by being tall. So it's kind of, I feel bad because I feel like he didn't really get a fair shake, but I also think that I'm fine with just the three big man lineup of Markin and Thad and Wendell, and seeing what those three combinations of guys can do.
Yeah, speaking of Thad, 11 points, 3 of 8 from the floor, 2 of 4 from 3, 7 rebounds and assist. 3 turnovers for him too. It seems like everyone has like 2 or 3 turnovers because 20 turnovers as a team. It was a pretty sloppy game, actually, up and down. 22 turnovers for the Bucks. I guess Thad's really the only guy. I mean, we didn't touch on Archie and Dunn, but we touched on the 3 guard lineup quite a bit. But what do you think of Thad and how he's been playing? It seems like he also gets kind of lost occasionally, but maybe that's what he's supposed to do. So I'm kind of on the fence with Thad so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a guy that's going to go out and give you 20 points and
Yeah.
10 rebounds. Much more of like a role contributor in the mold of Taj Gibson during those Derrick Rose years, where he comes off the bench, can kind of command the defense. And, there are times when he can come in and guard a guy like Giannis or LeBron. I know he's done that in the past when he was with Indiana, with Brooklyn. So I think he is more of a contributor on the defensive end, obviously, than the offensive end, but just leadership and just kind of helping things fall in line, both on and off the court. I think he's made a big impact so far. I think he really needs to be here, and I'm glad that he is. Even if the box score numbers don't necessarily reflect a huge impact.
Yeah, I guess like the small things he does are definitely helpful. I just think with the comparison with Taj, I feel like Taj was always kind of there and made his impact felt, whereas Thaddeus Young seems like he, sometimes takes it into the lane with too hard of a contest and kind of gives up the ball. Or, I mean, he was minus 17 today, right? So like anytime he was on the court today, it seemed like good things weren't happening. And sometimes I feel that way with that, but then some other times it seems like he is providing a lot. So the consistent positive impact is what I'm expecting more from Thad rather than kind of the on and off that we've been seeing. But I did want to go to Kobe more specifically. We kind of mentioned him in passing a couple times. He did also contribute to the late not being able to close it out syndrome that I talked about with Zach LaVine, because he just whiffed on 2 pretty makeable layups at the rim, especially for him. He's been making tough layups. His body control when he's in the air against contests has been impressive. But what do you see? Like, I guess we did kind of talk about Kobe, how he's a spark plug and he's cold and whatever, but what do you expect to see? Do you think he's gonna find some stability at all, or is this just gonna continue for a while?
Well, I think the big thing with Kobe right now is that like the only consistent skill that he can show is the jump shot.
Yeah.
And so I just think he's fast, but he's not super quick, and so he has a hard time getting in the
Really?
hoop. He's
Why
obviously
do you say that? Why do you say that? That's weird to me. That he's not quick.
he's fast in a straight line, like getting out in transition and running. But I don't think of him as a guy who's got a super fast first step in the way that Zach does, who can blow by guys
Okay.
off the dribble. He relies a lot on that step back, whether it's 2 or 3. And I think that's a lot of the time because he can't get past guys. And he's obviously super small. He's 6'5", but he's just very skinny and not a big build. So he has a hard time taking and absorbing contact at the rim. I think that's why he does that kind of underhanded scoop layup shot a lot. He can't really go up strong. He'll just get knocked over. And that's why he's not at the free throw line a lot. 2 free throws for 23 shot attempts is not a great ratio. So I think he just struggles there. And because he has to rely so much on his jump shooting and because he is so streaky with it, there are going to be times where he's just not giving you much.
Yeah, I guess what the reason why I questioned that was I think he's very twitchy. Like he can change directions in short distances quickly. So like getting the step back off, or like sometimes he catches guard some bigger wings on hesitation moves and then gets by him. But I do agree with what you're saying about the first step. He's a little too slight, and his steps are a little too short for him to burst in the straight line. But I think the twitchiness lets him get by, and that's why I was like, I think he's quick in that regard. Anything
Yeah, I
else?
mean, he's
Yeah,
definitely
go
like
ahead.
not a non-athlete. I don't want to make it seem like I don't think he's fast.
Oh no, no, no.
I
Yeah,
just
that's
think he
not. I
has a
just
hard time
yeah,
getting to the hoop at times, and that can be a burden on his jump shot.
definitely. Anything else that is sticking out to you that you want to talk about that we didn't get to? Because I mean, this game, not much else more to say really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that we kind of went through the list of players. I would say just like the defense has really, I think, been a problem for me. See, I pull up their defensive rating here in a second. They're 15th in the league,
Yeah.
105.8, which on its face is pretty good, but they're also forcing a ton of turnovers. I think they have, let's see.
That's before this game too, right? I think.
Yeah, that should be before this game. I'm not sure exactly what their turnover percentage is,
I
but
got it. They're
I know
11th
they're
in
they're
the league
they're fourth
on
in a lot of
offense,
steals.
and then
Go ahead.
they're first in turnover percentage on defense, according to Cleaning the Glass.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
they're getting a lot of turnovers, and I think that fuels their transition game. But because of how aggressive they are, and how out of position that can get them, they have really poor floor balance, and that leads to a lot of dunks and threes. I think their frequency of rim shots allowed is first in the league, and their frequency of 3-point shots is really high as well, 29th. So teams are getting, second in the league. So teams are getting a ton of threes and a ton of corner threes and a ton of shots at the rim, and that's why you see the disparity between the turnovers and also the defensive rating. So I don't know. I think they're going to have to readjust the way that they play defense and not rely on doing that against every team. Obviously, the Bucks are really good, and they are a long team that forces a lot of turnovers and also just hard to defend because they spread you out so far. But I'm still questioning the defense despite the numbers being a little bit better.
yeah, that's interesting. How the Bulls always tout their being number one in rim shot frequency on the offensive end, but I think this is the first time that I've kind of heard that they're last in terms of allowing rim shots too. So it's interesting that they're kind of doing the both things on both ends of the court. They're
Exactly.
also
They're getting the shots that you want to get, but they're also giving up the shots that you want to get.
yeah
So
they're
defenses are just having a hard time containing the shots that they want, but they're also able to get the shots that they want on the other end every time down. So
also giving up the least amount of mid ranges according to Cleaning the Glass. So exactly what you're saying.
not forcing you into the tough shots, not funneling you into the places where you don't want to shoot, and kind of allowing you to get to the places that you do want to shoot.
100%, it's the opposite of what you want to give up as a defense, which makes sense with how they've been looking in the second half. So, man, I think that's enough for this game and for the Bulls players, but this is your first time on the Bullish podcast, so I have to ask you your Bulls origin story. How far do you go back? When? Like, where are you, I guess, from, and what's your Bulls story?
Oh wow, we're getting personal here.
We have to, man. Every guest
Yeah,
that comes
no,
on.
I'm good. I'm glad to hear it. So I grew up in Chicago, moved out to the suburbs when I was pretty young. Grew up in River Forest, Oak Park area,
For sure.
and grew up watching the Bulls. I mean, I remember watching the first half of games when MJ was playing, and then having my dad record the second half so I could watch it before school the next morning. I mean, just a Bulls fan as far back as I can remember. And I think, I always loved the Bulls. I always loved basketball. It's always my favorite sport growing up. But those Derrick Rose teams really kind of made me fall in love with the game on another level. So that's kind of where I really fell in love with it. And then kind of started thinking about it a little bit more analytically and started writing about it. And now here I am.
Yeah, the Rose years are big time for me too. I was a bit too young for the Jordan years, born between the three peats, so couldn't really catch that. But Rose years hold a special place in all of our hearts, probably. So good to hear. And yeah, like I was saying, Bullcore Press was the first Bulls podcast. I think like one of the first basketball podcasts that I really got into.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah. So it's
Glad
nice.
to hear that.
We had Steph on too earlier, and now we got you on. So it's nice to chat with you guys in person and meet you. So yeah, where can people find you now though?
Yeah, just on Twitter at Gottlieb. Been writing Bleacher Report and covering the Warriors out here in the Bay Area. So a lot of Warriors stuff, some stuff around the league now because the Warriors are so depressing, and lots of Bulls tweets.
Wait, give us your like 2 to 3 minute Warriors takes here for Bulls fans that are curious what's going on in the rest of the league.
It's just kind of depressing right now. Obviously, you have Clay tearing his ACL in Game 6 of the NBA Finals last year. Kevin Durant tearing his Achilles in Game 5, and then leaving in free agency. Sixth game or second game of the season or something like that. Steph breaks his hand and is out for multiple months. So, you kind of hope to have the Steph, Draymond, Clay like reunion tour, but that's just not going to happen this year. And now it's guys like Kai Bowman and Jordan Poole and Eric Pascal who are not quite the young core that the Bulls have, but they're kind of trying to treat this year like a short rebuild, hopefully get a good draft pick, and then Clay comes back, Steph comes back, Draymond's still there under contract, and next year, obviously they have D'Angelo Russell as well. So I think next year they're going to be back in contention mode, but this year it's going to be bottoming out.
It's not that they did this on purpose. Obviously, none of them wanted to get hurt, but after 5 years of just crazy dynastic like finals runs that have been even bigger and more taxing, I think, mentally and physically and everything that goes on with the media and all that than any other team in history almost, with the social media era and all that going into play this time around. I think they're probably okay with taking a year kind of off, if you will.
And I think, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the emotional and kind of social side of it. I think just their bodies need a break. They're playing into June every year and logging heavy minutes, and Steph's getting quadruple teamed in the finals. I mean, they needed a little bit of break. So lots of like all their good luck has kind of turned around, and this year it's been like pretty incredible bad luck. But that's just kind of how it goes. And then hopefully next year they'll be back into a more competitive mode.
That's how it goes. Check Will out at Won't Gottlieb on Twitter. Thank you all for checking us out at Bullish Hoops on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, live streaming this post game. We got your Periscope halftime live shows as well during the games. Check us out there and hit us up with any comments, suggestions, questions that you may have. Appreciate all of you, and thank you to Will. We are out.